Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you both so much for being here. One of my concerns with Congress's increase in the security funding for members of Congress that we recently executed here was that it's not really addressing the root cause of the increased threats of violence and the underlying sort of lack of accountability for people making these threats. I don't want to make soft targets out of my local electeds, my teachers, my nurses, because we are hardening our security infrastructure as elected officials. You know, if my kitchen is flooding, I turn off the water before I start mopping up around the kitchen. And so I'm wondering what can be done to increase the prosecution and accountability of those who make threats against public servants, and how can these funds and this appropriation be leveraged to support that prosecution and turn down the volume and increase the accountability, because all taxpayers are bearing the burden of these threats?
I think that that's largely a question to make to the Justice Department and to other prosecuting authorities. That, you know, we have no power to prosecute or not prosecute particular crimes, to decide where the priorities lie, and that might be that incredibly important question might better be addressed to prosecuting officials.
One of the things I've wondered about is, you know, none of us want to talk about the threats that are made against us. We don't want to give anybody ideas, right? Especially having young kids at home. But one of the questions is the evidence that's collected by Capitol Police. How can their investigation be executed in a way that would provide supporting evidence for a prosecutor as they're considering picking up this case or not? Is that in the realm?
I think that would be something that our police department would be very happy to talk to you or your staff about in a private setting. I actually don't know the answer to that question of what the police do to maintain evidence to build a case. But I'm sure in a SCIF or other private setting, that would be something that you could explore.
And would that be considered as part of this apportionment for security funding?
That I don't know. That strikes me as general operational. As Justice Kagan said, we don't have any authority to prosecute within our branch, and our police don't either. So that seems like it's a best current practices question about how the police handle that now.
Yeah, I mean, it's my view that as we are, you know, it's not just about the individual threat. We have to maintain our security, but the way that we are pursuing that security should be done in a way for the longer view towards more accountability and better use of taxpayer resources and a more deliberative democracy. I've seen some people make the argument that rising security concerns will lead justices to opt out of appearing at events when the crowd is known to not be friendly. Do you think there's any merit to that argument? And if so, how does that impact the credibility of the institution as it continues to be viewed, rightly or wrongly, by many as increasingly partisan?
I can say that personally myself, I've spoken at many events that I wouldn't describe as friendly. I've been protested a lot and spoken at events where I know protesters will be. And that doesn't deter me from appearing, but if there were serious threats at the facility, I've encountered some of that before, then of course you can't remain out in the public place. And that's different. And I don't actually know, and again, this would be a question that perhaps could be discussed in a private meeting or a SCIF. I don't actually know how often that has happened, but I think when there are actually threats to life, you know, then obviously the public event can't go forward.
I think it's I'm presuming rare for a Supreme Court justice to have young children at home. I'm wondering, Justice Coney Barrett, if the allocation being made here for security is sufficient for provision of security services for your children.
I'm very grateful for the residential security. I think that is the primary. I mean, that has just been huge for us. I think questions about the allocation of resources and the number of detail and that sort of thing, I think I would refer that to the SCIF as well.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.
I yield back.
Support journalism you trust. Support PBS News. Donate now, or even better, start a monthly contribution today.